Hello, my name is Julia Harrison and I am Subject Officer for GCSE English Literature, and I'm here today to tell you about our new Eduqas specification in GCSE English Literature for England for First Teaching in 2015 and First Award from 2017. Introducing Eduqas. In light of the diverging qualifications between England and Wales, WJEC has developed a new brand, Eduqas. Eduqas will be the brand that provides schools with WJEC's newly reformed, Ofqual regulated GCSEs, AS and A-levels. Eduqas enables teachers to clearly distinguish between legacy qualifications in Wales and reformed qualifications in England. Eduqas qualifications will primarily be available in England, but also in Northern Ireland, the Isle of Man and the Channel Islands at any schools which offer Ofqual regulated qualifications. The WJEC Eduqas GCSE in English Literature. In developing this specification, WJEC has been mindful to include the following features: tasks which enable candidates to demonstrate what they know, what they understand and what they can do. Flexibility in the choice of texts to be studied. We took into account stakeholder feedback and you will see that we have a wide range of texts available to choose from. A WJEC Eduqas produced poetry anthology. This comes with a supporting CD-ROM where we have readings of the poems and worksheets that can be used on an interactive whiteboard. Opportunities for breadth of study, high-quality free support materials, straightforward wording of questions. You'll see as we work through this PowerPoint that WJEC has been mindful to ensure that questions are worded so that it's very clear what is expected from the candidates. There's analysis of unseen poetry, opportunities for close analysis of texts, and opportunities for extended essay responses. Key changes. GCSE English Literature will be assessed by examination only. It will be untiered. It will be linear with assessment in the summer series. It will require the study of whole texts, and those texts will be closed text. It will allocate 5% of the total marks to accurate spelling, punctuation and grammar. And it will allocate 20 to 25% of the total marks for tasks which require learners to perform comparisons across texts. It will then be graded 9 to 1. In addition, learners are required to study a play by Shakespeare, a 19th century novel, short stories were not permitted in this category, a selection of poetry from 1789, including representative romantic poetry, fiction or drama from the British Isles from 1914 onwards, and unseen texts. For those following a 2-year course, the first teaching will begin in September 2015. The first qualification award will be summer 2017, and the last award of the current specification will be July 2016. We are now going to look at each of the components that make up the GCSE in English Literature. The first component is Component 1, and this is the Shakespeare and Poetry component. It has a written examination of 2 hours and it is worth 40% of the qualification. Section A, worth 20%, is study of a Shakespeare text. Texts available are Romeo and Juliet, Macbeth, Othello, Much Ado About Nothing, Henry V, The Merchant of Venice, 1 extract question and 1 essay question based on the reading of a Shakespeare text from the above prescribed list. Section B, worth 20% of the qualification, is poetry from 1789 to the present day, and it is 2 questions based on poems from the WJEC Poetry Anthology, one of which involves comparison. Here we see the list of poems and poets that are available in our anthology. Next we go on to Component 2. This is the post-1914 prose and drama. the 19th century prose and the unseen poetry. It's a written examination and it's 2.5 hours. And that heavier time weighting was to reflect the fact that we're looking at 2 texts and 2 unseen poems. It's also worth 60% of the qualification. Section A, worth 20%, is study of a post-1914 prose or drama. And again, we have a wide range of texts here to choose from. Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro, Anita and Me by Mira Sayal, Lord of the Flies by William Golding, The Woman in Black by Susan Hill, Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit by Jeanette Winterson, and Inspector Calls by J.B. Priestley, The History Boys by Alan Bennett, Blood Brothers by Willie Russell, The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Night Time, the play, written by Mark Haddam, but this edition is by Stevens, A Taste of Honey by Sheila Delaney. There will be one source-based question on a post-1914 text from the above prescribed list, and I will go on to show you how that looks on an examination paper. In Component 2, we also have the 19th century prose and the unseen poetry. For the 19th century prose, our texts are Silas Marner, A Christmas Carol, Pride and Prejudice, War of the Worlds, Jane Eyre, or The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And once again, we have a source-based question on the 19th century prose text, and I will go on to show you what that looks like in the paper. Section C is the unseen poetry. Our examiners have a long history of setting unseen poetry questions, and a long history of setting questions that enable candidates to really show what they can do. And the unseen poetry is 2 questions on unseen poems, one of which involves comparison. The assessment objectives are common across awarding organisations, and here we have the 4 assessment objectives. AO1 to read, understand and respond to texts. AO2 to analyse language, form and structure. AO3 to show understanding of the relationship between texts and the context in which they were written. And AO3 is assessed in responses to the poetry anthology question and the 19th century prose question. And once again, when we look at how the questions are phrased, you will see that they are written explicitly to pinpoint that AO3 requirement. And AO4 is to use a range of vocabulary and sentence structures for clarity, purpose and effect, with accurate spelling and punctuation. And once again, AO4 is assessed in Shakespeare essay response and the post-1914 prose drama response. AO1 and AO2 are assessed in all questions. Interpreting AO3. AO3, the context aspect, has been widened slightly. The range of context that is most relevant as part of AO3 will depend on the text, the author and the task. In this new specification, AO3 can be taught and interpreted in a flexible way. In some cases, it may be most relevant to focus on the place and the time in which the author was writing and how these might have affected different aspects of the author's work. However, it may also be appropriate for candidates to explore context through consideration of the context within which the text is set. This includes, but is not limited to, location, social structures and features, cultural contexts, and periods in time. Also pertinent are the literary contexts around texts, such as genres. We will now look at each question in turn. For Component 1, Section A, it's 1 extract and 1 essay question on a text by Shakespeare. There is a choice of tragedy, history, and comedy. Candidates will be given an extract, and they will be given a question which requires them to look closely at the extract. So, for example, read the extract on the opposite page. Look at how Juliet and her father speak and behave here. What does it reveal to an audience about their relationship at this point in the play? Refer closely to details from the extract to support your answer. This question assesses AO1 and AO2, and close reading is required to show understanding and allow analysis of language and structure. Examples of questions for all of our texts can be found in our Specimen assessment materials, which are available on our Eduqas website. Component 1, Section A, the extract and the essay question, then goes on to give an essay question. And in this one, an example from Romeo and Juliet, the essay question is, even though Mercutio dies at the beginning of Act 3, he is very important to the play as a whole. Show how Mercutio could be described as important to the play as a whole. This assesses AO1, AO2 and AO4, and it requires learners to select, analyse and evaluate appropriate evidence from the text as a whole. There's also exemplar material available for these questions, and that can be found on our secure website. Component 1, Section B. There are 2 questions on poetry from 1789 to the present day, one of which requires comparison. The anthology has a range of poetry from the UK and abroad from 1789 to the 21st century. Learners are required to study all of the poems in the anthology. One poem will be printed on the examination paper, as close analysis of the language is required. This structured approach allows learners to show what they can do across the ability range. It assesses AO1, AO2 and AO3. And having a question separate from the comparison promotes accessibility. This is an example of how the question will look on the paper. The question has not been printed on this PowerPoint presentation, but once again, if you look at our specimen assessment materials on our Eduqas website, you will see a full copy of the question. You're advised to spend about 20 minutes on Part A and about 40 minutes on Part B. The 40 minutes on Part B reflects the higher weighting of the Part B question, which is worth 25 marks compared to the 15 marks available for Question A. A. Read the poem below, To Autumn by John Keats. In this poem, Keats explores ideas about nature. Write about the ways in which Keats presents nature in this poem. And as I said, the question will have the poem printed. B. Choose one other poem from the anthology, in which the poet also writes about nature. Compare the presentation of nature in your chosen poem to the presentation of nature in To Autumn. In your answer to Part B, you should compare the content and structure of the poems, what they are about and how they are organised, how the writers create effects using appropriate terminology where relevant, the contexts of the poems and how these may have influenced the ideas in them. As you see, we have designed the questions and the question rubric, trying to make each requirement explicit. This assesses AO1, AO2 and AO3. It allows learners to make connections across the texts in the context of the first 2 assessment objectives, and the comparison required in Part B in order to sustain focus on the task for AO1 is clearly signposted. Component 2, Section A. This is a source-based response on a post-1914 prose or drama text. We have a choice of established and more recent novels and dramas. The question that I've included in this presentation is the question on Lord of the Flies. And this is the question. You should use the extract below and your knowledge of the whole novel to answer this question. Write about the character of Jack and how he is presented throughout the novel. In your response, you should refer to the extract and the novel as a whole. Show your understanding of characters and events in the novel. The extract is reproduced in the examination paper and acts as a stimulus for answer on the text as a whole. And this assesses AO1, AO2 and AO4. The next slide shows the extract that is given. All of the extracts and all of the questions are available in our specimen assessment materials. And we also have exemplar material which shows how candidates can address the extract and the wider question. Component 2, Section B. Again, this is a source-based question on a 19th century prose text. There's a choice of established novels to suit the interests of a range of learners. It's a source-based question, e.g., this one is for A Christmas Carol. You should use the extract below and your knowledge of the whole novel to answer this question. Write about Scrooge and the way he changes throughout the novel. In your response, you should refer to the extract and the novel as a whole, show your understanding of characters and events in the novel, and refer to the context of the novel. The extract is reproduced in the examination paper and acts as a stimulus for answer on the text as a whole. And this assesses AO1, AO2 and AO3. And as you can see, the third bullet point, refer to the context of the novel, explicitly addresses that AO3, so candidates know exactly what is expected of them. The extract is reproduced on the next slide. And once again, you will see how the extract helps candidates to achieve their full potential. It allows them to analyse the language closely. Component 2, Section C, Part B, shows the comparative element. Once again, the instruction to read the two poems A Gull by Edwin Morgan and Considering the Snail by Tom Gunn is given. The question is then designed to make the requirement for comparison very explicit. As you can see, it is foregrounded in the question. Now compare Considering the Snail by Tom Gunn and A Gull by Edwin Morgan. The rubric is not italicised, directing candidates to do the following things. You should compare what the poems are about and how they are organised, the ideas the poets may have wanted us to think about, the poet's choice of words, phrases and images and the effects they create, and how you respond to the poems. This assesses AO1 and AO2 and it allows learners to make connections across the texts in the context of the first two assessment objectives. And once again, comparison is required in Part B in order to sustain focus on the task. Progress 8. The best of English language and English literature will be double weighted, provided a pupil has taken both qualifications. The second best score of English literature and English language can be counted in the open group of subjects if it is one of the pupil's highest scores in this group. The combined English qualification can be double weighted in 2016 because pupils will have studied both English language and English literature to achieve this qualification. The 2017 performance measures can be accessed through the following link. Why take both GCSE English Language and GCSE English Literature? The specifications are co-teachable. It offers students a broader and more varied English curriculum. There are transferable skills, e.g. the analysis of a writer's choice of language. It prepares students for further study, and if a student hits both qualifications, the higher grade is double weighted in the Progress 8 performance measure. Eduqas offers a wide range of support. We have our e-bulletins, teachers' guides, our IE online magazine for English teachers, our online exam review system, specifications, sample assessment materials, CPD and training, and the secure website for past papers, mark schemes and CPD materials. If you wish to contact us, here are our contact details.